Hello everyone, my name is Jaina and the topic of my research for the McNair-Ballotti Symposium is Universal Design for Learning. To be more precise, I will be looking at ways to use it in tutoring to help students with disabilities. So for my table of content, first I'm going to present the principle of universal design for learning. Then I'm going to talk about the impact of UDL in tutoring in general. Now, knowing that I am looking for ways to help students with disabilities during a tutoring session, I am going to present the disabilities that I focused on for my research and also what type of methodology to use for each disability during a tutoring session. And finally, I will show a survey from a scholarly paper that I found that shows learning preferences chosen by students with this specific disability. Now, what are the Universal Design for Learning, UDL principles? Universal design in education is a framework of instruction that aim to be inclusive of different learnings, preferences, and learners, and help to reduce barriers for students with disabilities. There are three principles. The first one, you have action and expression, and it answers the how of learning. Some students enjoy presenting slides of something that they learn. Others prefer the more traditional way, like, for example, taking a test. And then yet others might be very happy to create a physical model of a new concept they got to master. So by being able to demonstrate their learning through more than one standard way, students become more strategic and goal-directed learners. The second one is engagement. It answers the why of learning. Motivation is a crucial factor determining the success of learning of the learning process. So every lesson must spark an interest in the student minds, and teachers need to identify the best way to achieve this, whether by providing options for sustaining effort or self-regulation to ensure a greater degree of student agency and individual choice. And it will help students become more purposeful in their learning process and also become more motivated. The third one is representation. It answers the what of learning. Information and learning content should be presented in more than one way, and there are multiple options for customizing instructional delivery, from offering alternatives for auditory or visual information to guiding information processing and manipulation. So this diversity in how students get new information help them to be resourceful and knowledgeable learners. Now that the theoretical part of universal design for learning is clear, let's move on to how to implement it, which is UDL in tutoring. So the goal of UDL is to use a variety of teaching methods to remove any barriers to learning and give all students equal opportunities to succeed. It's about building in flexibility that can be adjusted for every student's strength and need. It's a blueprint for creating instructional goals, methods, materials, and assessment. To resume everything, UDL is designed for every learner. Now next, I'm going to present the different disabilities that I chose to focus on and their different characteristics. First, we have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. ADHD is the most common neurodevelopmental disorder of childhood. It is usually first diagnosed in childhood and often lasts into adulthood. Approximately 10 million adults have ADHD, and they often cope with difficulties at work and have many can have inconsistent performance at work or in their careers. And they have difficulties with day-to-day responsibilities. Their characteristic, you have first the inattentive type. They have lack of attention to detail, inability to stay focused on tasks during lectures or discussion. They can be absent-minded, or they can have a lack of organization with task or work. The second one is hyperactive, impulsive type. They have the inability to stay seated and also the inability to wait to speak in conversation. So sometimes they can cut you off, but it's not done on purpose. They just can't help it. And the last one is the combined type, where you have all characteristics from the inattentive and the impulsive one. Next, the second disability that we have is autism spectrum disorder, ASD. Autism is a complicated condition that includes problems with communication and behavior. It is defined by a certain set of behavior, and it affects people differently and to varying degrees. And it's a complex lifelong developmental disability that appears during early childhood, and it can impact a person's social skills, communication, relationship, self-regulation. And people with autism have trouble with communication. They have trouble understanding what other people think or how they feel. And they also might have problem with learning because their skills might develop unevenly. So the different characteristic of autism, you have, of course, communication problem, as I said, difficulty to understand facial expression, body language, along with the nonverbal cues and intonation of others. And you also have time management problems. So they will face many difficulties by if they take an exam or a test, because they have difficulty to keep the track of time. The last one is the speech and language disability. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, officially defines speech and language impairments as one, a communication disorder such as stuttering, and provides an example of a fluency disorder. Other fluency issues include unusual words repetition and hesitant speech. The second one is impaired articulation, and it indicates impairment in which a child experiences challenges in pronouncing specific sound. The third one is language impairment, and it can entail difficulty comprehending words properly and expressing oneself and listening to others. And finally, voice impairment. It involves difficulty voicing words. For instance, you can have throat issues, and it may cause an abnormally soft voice. The different characteristics. First, you have the expressive language disorder. It's the difficulty to come up with exact words to say, substitute like stuff or things frequently, or even for commonly used words. And then you have the receptive language disorder, and the characteristics are the lack of attention, the inability to answer questions about what was just discussed, and trouble following multi-step verbal instructions. Next, I'm going to talk about the different methodologies for each disabilities and how to handle them or spot them during a tutoring session. But first, I would like to say that CLAS tutors at Suffolk University will never ask any tutee to disclose the disability he or she may have, and it is up to the party concerned to disclose any information regarding their disability. So next, the methodology in tutoring sessions. For ADHD, for the methodology, you can use highlighters or colors to call attention to key points or ideas, because they lack attention to detail. So just by highlighting what you really want to focus on, you can just call their attention to the main idea. Next, you can use technology and visual. You have to also keep lessons brief and to the point. You don't need to go through all of the chapter, get all of the details out. Just focus on the main points and just keep it brief so that it's really easy to understand everything and process. And next, you can provide stretch break, because we also learned previously that they have the inability to stay seated. So if you have a tutoring session of 30 minutes or 1 hour, you can maybe give them like 5 minutes stretch break. So just that it will be easier for them to follow through the whole length of the tutoring session. Next, some methodology for autism. You can prompt the students, also provide reinforcement. So when they are trying to answer a question that you just asked them, you can just like show partial clues, reinforce what they are saying. Also, for your learning activities, it has to be highly structured, key points, very brief, just the main idea, and explain it really briefly and highly structured, step by step. Like highly structured learning activities, also you have to break tasks down into simple steps. Don't make it too complex. Also teach in context outside of the classroom with a one-on-one, one-to-one rehearsal and feedback, and in the natural setting. And that is just a tutoring session, so it's really good. And also you have to teach them social problem solving. So what is happening here? What should I do? Make choices. You can like role play with feedback and evaluate effectiveness of the choice. And the last one, the speech and language disabilities, you can pause during lectures or discussions so that the student can discuss what they are learning. Also, you can explain new ideas using phrases such as "it's like," or "you can compare it to," or "it's the opposite of." Also provide additional information to their thoughts, and use graphic organizers such as mapping tools or concept diagrams, just that it's just easier for them to understand the whole thing. And also pause so the student can review their notes. Now I'm going to show you a real-life survey that I found on a scholarly paper that shows learning preferences of some students with disabilities. So for the demographics, the sample size, we had 15 students, 12 with disabilities, 3 without. For the education level, 11 were undergraduate students, 4 were graduate students, and the disabilities of all of the students that had the disability, there were ADHD, learning disability, and anxiety disorder. The study team is, of course, the UDL methodology, and the community setting. The survey was done in a urban four-year university in Southern California, and the interviewers or writer of the paper, there were David Black, Lois Weinberg, and Martin Brodwin. It was for the journal named Exceptionally Education International in 2015, and they were from California State University in LA. Now here, it was done with a Likert scale. So from 1 through 3, and 1 is not useful or unimportant, and 3 is very useful and important. So here, the survey was given to the 15 students to know what they think about the instructional methods, learning tools, and learning preferences. So you can see that students with disabilities really like small group discussion and hand-on interactive activities. You can see it here because the scale for both is 3. For the learning tools, they really like tutors. And for learning preferences, if you compare orally, visually, explain with words, hands-on, and picture, graph, and chart. The learning preferences that students with disabilities prefer is visual, hands-on, and pictures. So maybe orally is just like too abstract. They really needed to with you to explain it visually, step by step. Yes, so you can see here that They prefer small group discussion, interactive activities, when you have hands-on activities, pictures, and also just the visual part. And thank you. This is the end of my presentation. I would like to thank the CLA staff, Andrew Sciofi, and of course, Jamie Bonder. Please leave your questions and comment below, and thank you.